We are record. So go
Okay.
on.
Well, thank you for coming to this webinar. This is the Uruguay section inviting you to participate in a very interesting conference by Rakesh Kumar. I will introduce you to him, and please note that we are organizing a URUCON, a conference in Uruguay. This is the picture of our location in the map, some information on the population, etc., the flag, and the view of the seaside. Dr. Rakesh, thank you for coming here. Well, I just have to say that you are a life fellow. This is a more distinguished position for a member. You are also member of the Eta Kappa Nu, HKN, also in the board of the Eta Kappa Nu IEEE activities. And everything coming from you is very interesting. Like I had the chance to see your roadmaps. They are quite interesting. I suggest everyone that try to go to the future directions, and you'll see everything that Rakesh has done for us. So just to continue, this is the view of the municipality that we are going to have the conference. It's a very nice location. The building is very useful for our purpose. We have a nice seaside, and you see girls riding along the seaside that they're also very beautiful. Yeah. So it was approved by Ministry of Education and Culture. That means that the government is supporting our conference. The topics you can see there, everything from communications to technology management and more. And the registration you have here, and remember, students are totally free. If you are Uruguayan, doesn't matter where you live, but you are a Uruguayan student, you get free access to the conference. Dates are from 18 to 20 November. And this is the site and all the social networks. Okay, so now go to the point, Rakesh Kumar, your webinar. This is again your CV, and floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Gustavo. It's been a pleasure knowing you. I see a few people I know in the attendees list here. Hello, Gerardo. Buenos dias, everybody. I am based in San Diego. Let me share my screen. Do you gotta? Let me do this. Okay. So
Not yet. We have the treasurer, deputy treasurer. How are you, treasurer?
Yeah. He's the father of one of our projects. Key member of our team.
Buenas tardes.
Questions, Gerardo.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you for funding all these activities.
John Urbanker was part of the seminar I did yesterday, so I'm honored to have experienced people like that, Gustavo and Gonzalo and others. So hello, everybody. I'm a lot older than I look. That's how I became a life fellow, I guess. But so I decided to change the title just a little bit. I did a talk last week in Tokyo, and that was an audience dominated by students and young professionals. And so I kind of turned the talk a little bit inside out. I'll talk about two major things. One is careers for young professionals and younger people, I guess everybody. And then I'll focus on database projects moving forward. So, you know, it used to be that people used to say that in my time, when you graduated from school, you would go find a job and just stay there forever. These days, what the saying is that people will change careers maybe 5 to 7 times. In fact, if you look at the details of my history in the industry, I've had jobs with 3 different companies. So I'm not that far behind, but there's certainly a lot more mobility these days. And if you recognize that, then the question is, how do you get your first job? And what they say is you got to be good in your technical skills to get that job and grow in that. And there's some people that'll always say, I want to be this technical expert, I'm going to stay there. Certainly true for academics and researchers, but it could also be true in the industry. You could be in the technical ladder. But what happens if you're trying to grow in the industry? You need to have what I call soft skills, and that includes things like leadership, be able to talk to people, make presentations, be able to make connections. All of those things are really important in the growth of your career. So keep that in mind. And as I move forward, the model that I like to use is a target model that says in the center is your focal area, your expertise. You could be an ion implant engineer or a semiconductor engineer, like I have been the entire career. But in my career, I got my PhD in semiconductor device physics, and then my first job is what the manager decided to put me on was become an ion implant engineer, and that was okay. Um, but with my breadth, I wanted to learn more about adjacent areas. That's where the outer circles come in. And that has really helped my career. So keep that kind of a model in mind. It has certainly helped me, and I know other people that have been helped in that situation. One of the most prolific ways to do this is to get involved in project management. Besides building your technical skills, um, get multidisciplinary. That's the different layers of the target here. Um, and build your relationships with people you're working with. You got to learn how to make the presentations, communicate, negotiate if you're doing a business type of an arrangement. So there's a lot of things that you could do to broaden your career. That's the basic word, broaden your career. Another thing that since I left a big industry, I've been consulting and now teaching entrepreneurship at the University of California in San Diego. And what I teach is entrepreneurship. And in that scenario, what you really, to be a successful entrepreneur, you should solve problems for customers. And the customer typically does not know what the solution is that they need. They know what the problem is. And so actually one of my students after graduation came back and he taught me that he treats his industry manager as a customer. And I had to stop and think about it, but that makes a lot of sense because the manager doesn't really know what the right solution is. He or she thinks he knows, and they formulate a problem and they give it to you as an employee and you go and do it. Well, what if you were to have a discussion with your boss to figure out what problem they're trying to solve and maybe enhance the specification of what they were trying to get you to build? That would be the type of employee I would want to have if I was the hiring manager. So I think you can use those kinds of skill sets that help you both as an entrepreneur as well as in the industry. You do need to find a mentor. I've had mentors along the way. I was lucky enough to have a boss that was really congenial and very interested in my growth, and he really helped me. So I think even trying to make transitions from one space to the other, it's very important to have somebody you can talk to. Okay, so and give you another example. Like I said, I was a semiconductor engineer, joined the IEEE Electron Devices Society, then I got involved in Solid State Circuit Society, ended up being the president of that about 10 years ago. And then TEMS, which is Technology Engineering Management Society, which is what Gustavo is a member of. Social implications in technology, power electronics, reliability society.
Excuse me, doctor. Perhaps you need to maximize the screen because we are seeing in a reduced area of the screen, the presentation.
You're not seeing the full screen?
So Rakesh, we're
Maybe
seeing
you can put
the
in full
presenter
screen.
view. Yeah, we're seeing the presenter view. So we
Yes.
see the current slide and the next slide
Yes,
and the
and the
timer and all of.
notes,
Oh,
and the
I'm doing
notes.
the wrong one. Sorry. Let me do this.
And now we see your full screen. Hello there.
I didn't want to interrupt, but correct. If you can, please do it.
Is that better?
That's perfect.
Yeah,
Excellent.
good. Perfect.
Thank
Excellent.
you, Rakesh.
Thank
That's
you.
my bad. That's my bad. Sorry. Okay. So the point here is I've got involved in many different areas. And part of the reason is as I've broadened my perspectives and I'm running the roadmaps and I'm, as Gustavo said, and the next things I'm going to talk about is database strategy stuff. There's a lot of activity going on in multiple societies, and that has helped me broaden my perspective. One of the values of being in an IEEE, of course, is you have access to the 39 different technical areas within the discipline of electrical engineering, and that's really an important one to have. For someone as old as I am that's been around, it's easy for me to go from one society to the other, go to a conference, I meet people that know others, and that's what networking value really is. So I would advise people to get engaged in adjacent areas. This is my core, and then these are the rings of the target that I was talking about. Okay, so now I'm going to switch gears to data stuff. So about 3 years ago in 2022, in January 2022, the then president of IEEE, Ray Liu, appointed me to ask me to lead a group of people in a database business strategy, what we call ad hoc committee. And the whole purpose was to look at, IEEE generates a lot of data. We have over 6 million documents, over 2,000 conferences. I don't even know how many people attended. But the point was, if you take that data and put it in a format that you can predict technology trends, for instance, or make the data valuable. You may have heard the term that data is the new oil, but you know what? Oil gets burnt off once you use it, and data can be reused over and over again. And so that was kind of the problem we were given. Gerardo is part of the team. And what we ended up focusing our efforts were in 4 areas. I will talk about 2 of them, Ask IEEE, which Gerardo is I call him the father of Ask IEEE. We'll talk about that in a minute.
If it moves
And
back in,
then,
it pays rent, Rakesh. It's gonna pay rent if it moves back in.
okay, don't make the charge too high. Okay, and then I'll talk about data port. The other 2 things in the light blue, the foresight is the one that the intent is to have derived data, information from the data that we have and create technology trend predictions. So if you've used agency like Gartner, for instance, they do a very good job in showing what the trends are. But if you stop and think about it, IEEE has the core data that we can build a lot extra value into that kind of information. And so that's what foresight was supposed to be. It hasn't made as much progress as I would have liked to. And the similar area is where, once you go explore, explore the IEEE Explore and do some searches, the engine gets smart enough to know what your interests are, and it can make predictions of or suggestions of what else you should look at, kind of like Amazon does, right? We don't have anything like that at IEEE. So creating a digital twin or a cognitive digital twin of the user could be also a very useful application. So those are things that have been considered. By the way, this was all before ChatGPT was announced. That was late of 2022. So we had kind of a head start, but they obviously have made a lot of progress in the industry. So let me talk a little bit about data. I think we all know that there's a lot of data being generated. There used to be a lot of data, and then, of course, came along OpenAI with ChatGPT, and the demand for data and the generation of data has been escalating exponentially. And a lot of the chip manufacturers have been trying to do chips that are more efficient. There's now a lot of talk about sustainability in computing, because just downloading data and uploading data uses up a lot of energy. So there's a lot of considerations here. But the point I'm making is a lot of data is being generated. This is a chart from my IEEE Solid State Circuits Conference by Kevin Zhang, who's the Senior Vice President at TSMC, which is the largest foundry. So very recent data, similar data from Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger, who's talking about the compute being very pervasive, and the demand just keeps going up with zettabytes and quotabytes of data. Another way to look at the same thing, going to exascale integration. So given that background, let me now propose two scenarios. Let's say you are an engineer working as an academic, or you're a researcher working in academics. In order to formulate you have a problem, you formulate a hypothesis, you create an experiment, you generate data, you create a model, and you may write a research publication in an IEEE journal. Simplified version of what the process might look like. So what happens to the data? You publish the paper, but not everybody publishes the data. That data could be useful to the next researcher, so they don't have to go all the way back into redesigning the experiment. They could learn from that. And in fact, at least in the United States, there are a lot of research agencies that are pushing, as they fund the projects, to require that people will share their data and make the research reproducible. So there's a lot of impetus to do this. I recognize, though, that not all pieces of data are shareable. Some could have a lot of privacy associated with it. So if it's private, keep it private. But if it's shareable, I think it could be a very valuable resource. Second scenario I would pose is if you're an industry practitioner. So you're working in the industry, you're trying to broaden your perspectives, learn about different topics adjacent in my target model. Where do you get that data to study this? Same kind of situation, right? Or you could be generating a lot of data in your work. What happens to the data? Maybe some of it is shareable, and maybe it can help somebody either in your own company or outside, if it's non-competitive. So the point is that there is no place that you can easily find that data. In general, people, when the data is generated, they'll either have it on their laptop, in their local repository, maybe GitHub, but how does anybody else find it? So we've created at IEEE what's called IEEE Dataport. It has over 10 million users now, over 6,000 data sets, and it's just the usage is just escalating exponentially. So we're happy with that, and we certainly would like you to try using Dataport as well. So what is Dataport? I'd like you to listen to a couple-minute video here.
IEEE Dataport is used by millions of researchers, scientists, students, and engineers around the globe who are working to accelerate scientific discovery, advance technology, and make the world a better place. The IEEE Dataport platform allows users to store, share, and access research datasets and collaborate with peers, all on one secure platform. Backed by IEEE, the world's largest technical professional organization, Dataport provides access to a wide variety of datasets, from artificial intelligence to computer science to geosciences and many more. In fact, there are thousands of datasets in more than 30 categories for research of all disciplines. Dataport enables individuals and institutions to store their research data indefinitely. Individuals can store up to 2 terabytes of data per dataset. Institutions can store up to 10 terabytes of data per dataset. Users also have the ability to upload their research as an open access or standard dataset. Open access datasets are available to everyone for free. This can increase exposure to your research data, support research reproducibility, and help meet funding agency requirements. IEEE Dataport also makes it easy to create a data management plan, another way to help users meet funding agency requirements. Dataport is an excellent place for researchers to collaborate using the data competition and feedback features. There are 3 ways to use IEEE Dataport. Option 1. Create a free account. A free account gives you access to all open access datasets. Option 2. Become an individual subscriber. This subscription gives you access to all open access and standard datasets. If you're a member of an IEEE society, you already have an individual subscription. Just log into IEEE Dataport with your IEEE credentials. Option 3. Take advantage of your organization's institutional subscription. Organizations with institutional subscriptions provide all members of their organization with free access to all IEEE Dataport features. We hope you'll join our data community made up of the world's leading researchers, scientists, and academics. Learn more at IEEE-dataport.org.
So if you log into IEEE-dataport.org, what you'll see is a homepage like this. It lets you explore the data sets that are there already. You can submit your own data set. Another popular aspect of Dataport is data competitions. So there are a number of them going on, and I'll give you some examples. You can create your own. You can, if you have the data set, you can find from Dataport. You can design a competition around it, and we're almost an end-to-end. We'll help you create the competition, help you manage it, and help you give the prizes, whatever. There's a number of things we could do on that. You can search for databases. And so what happens is once you upload your data set, you get a digital object identifier. And for those of you that you know, when you publish a research paper, you get a DOI number as well. That's what makes it searchable and citable. And so if in the scenario you had the research done, you published a paper and you upload the data set, you can get you could get a link to the paper from your data set, and you get a citable paper. So why is this important? Maybe important for younger people especially, because you get 3 opportunities for citations, right? The number of citations count for your growth, I guess. So you get a research publication citation, you get a citation for the data set that you uploaded, and there's a third opportunity here is what's called a data descriptions publication. It has just been launched. They're accepting papers now in Explore. So this is a paper you can write describing the data sets that you have. And so yeah, three in one, right? One set of research, you can get 3 citations. So I would urge you to check it out and see what you can do with the data sets that are there already, or upload them. Let me give you some use cases. Here's one. If you're in the power and energy space, you're looking for data for real life current signal generations from a wind generator, 20,000 views. It's not shabby. It's from Brazil, right? Region 9. Another example, and for this I got to give you background. In India, they have created what's called an Indian Urban Data Exchange, IUDX. They collect data from all kinds of sources. There are over 50 smart cities in India, and each of the smart cities generating a lot of data. They really don't know what to do with the data. So we have partnered with them. They have uploaded data sets of, in this particular case, a design competition that they designed. It's traffic data from Bangalore. I don't know if you've been there, but traffic is pretty chaotic. And so they have these cameras installed and they have the data, the videos from there. And they've created a competition that the reason they're working with us is now the competition is open to everybody in the world. that accesses IEEE. So it's broadening their reach, and we're happy to be supporting it. Had over 40,000 views as of a month and a half ago, so I'm sure this is up much higher now. So competition is to make predictions and models, and there's two phases to this. You can read the detail. So we're excited about this. In this case, the prizes are being monetized by the IEEE Foundation. So we're getting embedded with them. I'm meeting with them in a couple of weeks. So here's another one. It's a hybrid energy forecasting and trading competition. It was sponsored by a company called Ørsted. So again, 17,000 views. So design competitions get a lot of hits in terms of the usage. Let me give you a different set of examples. There's a space competition I presented at, and it turns out that IEEE is pretty active in low Earth orbit satellites, LEOs, and they have an opportunity to what I call democratizing space use in many applications. Why is that? Because the data that, these are satellites that are a lot easier to launch, they're much smaller, and yet you can load up a lot of experiments in there, and those experimental data then in many categories. I give two examples here. One is precision agriculture. I think the Canadian government is already doing this. Is they take data from satellites and they bridge the gap to the farmer, so the farmer knows what to plant, when to plant, what's the optimum time, and things like that. Health and science experiments, there's all kinds that are being pursued. So, but in general, there's a lot of data being generated as these experiments are ongoing. And the gap then is to, well, how do you take the data from there and make it available to the individual farmer, giving them data that's useful to them and not having them get trained on the technical details of the information. So that I think is a big gap, and I think many agencies I'm sure will be working on trying to bridge those gaps. So another example here for precision agriculture may be the use of aerial imagery and artificial intelligence to enhance spatial coverage and get, again, information from farmers. And this example is from Microsoft Research. We had one of the directors make a presentation. As part of what they were working in is they collect the aerial imagery from satellites or drones or balloons. They make a panoramic overview and sensors data, and then they use machine learning to create precision maps of what they're seeing. Another similar example, a different methodology, is from Western Ontario University in Canada. This lady, a professor, presented at one of my conferences where you're combining remote sensing, GPS, and mapping software to generate the data, and then it helps make decision making. So let me show you some examples. Pretty impressive. You can see the layout of the fields. You can parse that into different types of crops that are being grown. And then you can go a step further and you can pinpoint where there's nitrogen deficiency, and you can then fertilize the plants in that particular area. So if you're a farmer in one of these areas and you learn that my nitrogen level's low, that would be the value. The farmer doesn't want to know all the series that I showed. So that's what I meant, the gap in trying to get information to the farmer that's meaningful to them. I think that's a huge opportunity. So the challenge for the community, I think, is if you're generating a lot of data and recognize that it may not be very shareable, I'll give you an example. Power and Energy Society. So I went there last year to the general meeting, and they were starting to talk about a lot of data being generated. The utility company, your home, you have data that you're using, what time, how the usage varies over during the day and things like that. And they basically said, yeah, we're generating a lot of data, but go away because this is not shareable. And I said, okay. Well, this year we went back there, and you will not believe how interested they were in sharing data. In fact, as of this morning, I think we have about 500 data sets in the power energy space on Dataport. We got involved with many of the working groups at the conference, and our booth was just totally inundated. So I think they're recognizing that there are pieces of data that are shareable. I don't want them to share anything that's not shareable, right? But there's enough to keep us busy, and I think that's an important step forward. So this is the trick: is you got to figure out what pieces are shareable, and I think you can look at your own experiments, your own um, industry work that you're doing. You're collecting data. Is it shareable? Is it useful for somebody else? I would say go ahead and upload it. Okay, and the point is you get exposure to the rest of the world and create a lot of models and techniques. As I mentioned, there's over 10 million users. I think there's over 1 million in Bangladesh and 1 million in India. That whole region is just exploding with the data and an interest in using it. Many schools in India, for instance, are doing competitions. They're working with us. We've got a data ambassador in India. I'd love to have one in Region 9 if one of you is interested in being a champion for Dataport. I'd love to recruit you. Get in touch with me. Okay, so that was Dataport. I'm going to switch gears now to Gerardo's baby. Feel free to add something, Gerardo. It's kind of an abbreviated version. So Ask IEEE is like a ChatGPT, if you will, but focused on IEEE material. I don't know. I think Gustavo is a big proponent of ChatGPT. I think the success rates are like 55% of the answers that you get based on industry information. What, as you know, IEEE Explorer is behind the paywall, and we have a lot of material at IEEE. So we have introduced this. It's an engine that's developed by a partner company called Hello Nesh. What it does is it's a RAG AI, is a retrieval augmented generation AI, which is based on material that comes from IEEE. And then it'll answer questions, and I'll show you how it works. It is a combination search and a domain expert using the NLP and large language models. We trained the model with the IEEE material, and we've had a lot of problems within IEEE convincing people that we will maintain ownership of our IP, intellectual property. People have been convinced on that, and so you can access the information if you're a member of IEEE. So how does it work? There's certainly the IEEE knowledge base that has been ingested into Hello Nesh's cloud platform. What they do is they operate on that and create a data index and extraction process and enrich and train the process. Then you as a user, if you ask a question, what the engine does is it will retrieve the answer based on similarity vectors and rank and score the information. Then it feeds into a large language model that then generates the script answer that you will see. Difference also is that we will give you the engine gives you the reference for where the answer came from. If it couldn't find the answer, it will tell you, by the way, and it'll tell you how many hits you got. So how good the answer is a measure there. It links to the source, provides you a link. You can actually see the paper. You can click on it and see the document where you got the information, and so it's pretty impressive. You should try it. It's ask.ieee.org. So if you hit ask.ieee.org, you'll end up with a landing page that looks something like this. avatars are their way of defining subject areas or file cabinets, whatever. So if the information came from climate data, I think that's what the default is set up now, or it could be technical, or it could be governance documents, and possibly standards. So those are the four avatars that have been ingested, have ingested material from those four areas. So you can ask question. I'll give you some examples. So I'll give you one example, right? So what is zero carbon emission? It gives you a script of an answer, like a snippet. It tells you where the answer came from, what the source was, and it allows you to pick an expert. If you don't like the snippet and you want a more detailed contact, you can actually click on this. You also get to rate the answer. And those are the four or five different areas that I talked about. One of the things we are doing is that in the climate change area, I don't know if you're aware, but IEEE has a kind of open climate change information. All of the open access material from climate change is in the engine. What we have is an experiment ongoing that says if you expose data that's behind the paywall, that there is no impact to the downloads that one gets. So initial results from that, I just got some this morning, are extremely good. People like the answers, and they're happy with them, and we will hopefully get the end goal that we have in mind as far as and the downloads that get affected. Okay, so now if you hit source, what you get is a source of where the materials came from, a listing of the material, where the sources are. So this is a paper, and it tells you some things about it. You can give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, upvote or downvote. You can also hit the source view. Oops, on the previous page, right? What you'll get then is the source view where you actually see the link to the article. And if you were live here, you would be able to click on it and go to Explore and be able to read the article. You will not be able to download it unless you're Explore, if you have the Explore license to do it. So just keep that in mind. It tells you the number of hits, which means there are 3 papers, 3 locations where it found the answer from. Here are 2 and 2 and 1, so I would likely think that this is the most favorable answer that you get. And as I mentioned, if it cannot find an answer, it'll tell you that. So this experiment that I was telling you about on climate change, if you go to IEEE Explore and search for open access material and this kind of stuff, and go to paper, what you'll see is a little tab that comes up on the top right. Just be careful that sometimes the ad blockers will prevent that from coming up, so you got to use an ad blocker. And make sure you see this, then you have the ability to go click on it and it'll take you directly to the Ask IEEE engine. So we're testing that interface as well. And also on the IEEE app, there is a promotion ongoing where you can check for climate change information and be able to ask a question. So we're making a lot of progress here. We're excited about this. I think IEEE is slow in implementing new changes like this, but I think we're excited with the advance and the progress we have made. So in summary, I'll say that we have, I've shown you how younger people ought to be managing their careers, maybe even middle age, and you can apply those in the database activities. And I've been able to show you the progress we've made on a couple of projects, Dataport and Ask IEEE. So with that, I'll close my presentation and encourage you to ask any questions.
Thank you, Rakesh. Thank you, Rakesh. Well, we check the the chat for questions, I would like to clarify, because I understood that you mentioned that Gustavo is opponent of ChatGPT, but I'm just the opposite. I am heavy user of GPT for Microsoft Copilot and Ask IEEE. I even was interviewed by the developers of Ask IEEE for giving opinions. So I'm in very favor of your application. I think it's excellent. So we have to promote this Ask IEEE. And my suggestion is, if you let me, I can provide some independent companies this recording. I need your authorization to forward this excellent webinar, because you can have a lot of people that needs this data port. So please let me know by offline chat or email if you allow me to forward this excellent webinar. Okay.
Sure, I don't have any problem. I don't think
All
there's
right.
anything. Well,
So
so these are not official Dataport is an official product. The Ask IEEE is not a released IEEE product. So as long as they understand that, I think that's okay. What do you think, Rado? I think that should be all right, right?
That should be okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
then
Question?
may I have a question, please? I got instructions from the Standard Association that they don't allow to use ChatGPT for any standard. So will that be the case for Ask IEEE? Are we banned to produce standards based on Ask IEEE replies?
Well, you want to hear the dirty linen? So yes, I agree. I think Ask IEEE would be have a perfect use case with standards, because people have a
Yes.
problem understanding what standard to go use and get the quick answers. But I have dealt with 3 presidents there. They all say yes, 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 but nothing happens. So we have dropped it below the line, and I think the open standards are in there. Whatever they call them, get standards or whatever. But so those are in there, but there's some hesitation to openly use it. I guess I don't know what the word is. I can't explain it.
My final question, is there any tutorial video or something to go deeper into Ask IEEE and Dataport?
There is no tutorial, but you really don't. You can start using it. Anybody can start using it.
Okay.
And really, as the video said, anybody can log into Dataport. If you have an IEEE email address and you're a member of a society, you can upload and download the material for free. By the way, the history of Dataport is the following. It used to be a platform called Sigport in the Signal Processing Society. And since then we figured, people that are publishing data should have, published papers should have data. So that's what we were catering. So if you remember my chart, it was kind of moving along. And then last year we got funded $1 million to go escalate the usage. And that's why it's just taken off. But the focus was internal data sets. We have now opened it up. So anybody can upload data. I always get confused with this, right? I think you can download open data sets. You may have to register to become a user. But if you want to download anything that's behind the paywall, you have to be a subscriber. So it's a little complicated in the business model, but and the other thing, that if you were an individual, you can upload data sets that are up to 2 terabytes, which is pretty large. But if you had an institutional subscription, then each user can upload 10 terabytes. So those are some intricacies. I think if there was any interest, we'll be glad to answer it. But we just talked at the steering committee meeting earlier today about creating tutorials of how to create a data competition. So stay tuned on that one. But tutorials may be something we'll look at too as well. That's a good idea.
I see a raised hand from Mauricio Vieira Rodriguez.
It's almost like that surprised you were the first attendee, so. Okay, so data port looks great, but how this relates to copyright? I don't know that there's a copyright issue. When you publish the data, when you upload your data set, you maintain ownership. We do not open the data set. You got to meet the metadata rules, follow those, and then upload the data set. So you're still the owner of the data set. IEEE does not take ownership of the data. Who owns the copyright? Actually, I would have to check. I would think that if you have a copyright on your data, maybe you don't want to be uploading it. It's like taking your presentation and you had a copyright and you're saying there's a mismatch there between that and the open. It can't be open then, right? So I would have to double check on that one, Thomas. I don't want to tell you something wrong. But so far the problem has not come up. As far as I know, you do maintain data ownership of your data. IEEE original producer. This data can be used only for academic or commercial. No, it can be used for both. So, if you're in industry, you're generating a lot of data. Feel free to share it if you think you're going to benefit. You can design a design competition around it. Does that answer your question? I think unfortunately, so far in IEEE, we do not have the visibility as to who's downloading these, the million users in India and Bangladesh. But we are putting together a new set of engines that will tell us, who's actually doing this, whether it's academic or industry. In my discussions, there are a lot of students interested in looking at data sets because they can use those for their research. And like I said, in power energy, we've got 500 data sets now. So I think they're coming mostly from the industry. Any other questions? How many of you would start using it? Check it out. Maybe you know somebody that has data that's being generated. Feel free to use it. And by the way, if you have comments on once you use it, if you like it, let us know. If you don't like it, let us know so we can get to a better place.
And I saw something interesting. You have some people as referrals for any question you put. So if you don't get satisfaction on the answer, you can contact experts in the Ask IEEE.
Yeah.
So somebody will help you. That's very amazing.
Yep.
All right. Any other question, please?
Okay. Sounds like everything was totally clear.
Oh, yes. I'll send you for your consideration an invitation to talk to the ITU organization for artificial intelligence for good. So please consider the possibility. I think it's quite interesting, and we can promote IEEE in such large ITU organization as well.
Okay. That'd be very good. I wonder if there are institutions that might want to subscribe to it, maybe your ministry or some, schools.
Oh, yeah. So
We have a number of universities, Dartmouth is a subscriber. We have the Air Force looking at it, Johns Hopkins, a number of universities here in the U.S. and overseas as well. If there's interest, I think right now the pricing is discounted, so you may want to consider it. I think the first one would probably get a heavy discount. So whoever wants to be first, we can make it worth your while.
So we really appreciate your support and your kind intervention, cooperation with URUCON 2024, and hope to see you soon. Thank you so much for your presentation. Any other question, just put in the chat or we close the session.
Thank you
Sorry,
for having me and the
I have some
opportunity.
question.
Hey, Eduardo.
I don't want to interrupt the conversation about with Gustavo and Rakesh. Thank you, Rakesh, for your webinar. It was very interesting. And I'm a student member from UDELAR. You mentioned in the presentation that data by itself has a limited value and must be positioned to solve problems. Could you elaborate on the process of identify which problems are most suitable for data-driven solution and how organization can effectively bridge the gap between raw data and actionable insights? It be clear.
So if I'm getting your question right, you're looking for examples from an industry that could make this useful? Is that what, so, you know, I mean, let's go back to, there you go.
And put it off because I'm in the library of the engineering faculty. Thank you.
Having trouble understanding Mauricio here, so I mean, you could be a John Deere that's collecting a lot of data, a tractor, right? And then how do you take that data and parse it to the farmer? And that could be a real life example. I mean, if you're a sensor provider, you can be generating a lot of data. A number of conferences are, you know, there's a Smart Cities conference that we will be presenting at the end of October. And there's a Positioning Networks conference in Hong Kong, IPIN. So they're all looking at the data that's generated. What do I do with it, right? You can have the data, and then if you're on the industry side, you can, or an academic side, you can use that data to design an experiment, to develop a model, for instance. You can also, yeah, I mean, that would be one use case. You could do a design competition based on one data set that you can now have different people do the models, and you end up with multiple models, for instance, which is the kind of thing I think the Bangalore people are doing. So does that kind of address your question, or?
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Rakesh.
I guess,
Right.
Rakesh, any situation where, you know, we have sensors everywhere these days, and we collect a lot of data of everything. But the challenge here is, how do we extract value from that data? How do we package it in a way that can become a product or a service? So I think really it's we're casting a very wide net with all of these database strategies. Is really looking at those places where we collect that data, that could be, you know, scientific data, sensor data, and extracting value out of it and packaging in a way that can be used either by internal users of the same company, or it could be something that you can package and sell as a new product revenue. So I think any area where you have a lot of data streams coming in and not a lot being done is an area that's ripe for innovation. So good question,
Yeah,
Mauricio.
I agree totally. Except I think it's a little bit beyond the scope of Dataport as it is today, because we're the facilitating platform, right? We're collecting the data. I think what you're saying is absolutely true, but then you can could be a startup, somebody that has the business of creating value out of a piece of data, right? That individual companies can do that. I don't know if IEEE can, but well, we could, but I don't think that's part of the plan so far.
With more people like you on board, I think we will. So
okay. That's our discussion tomorrow morning, maybe. Okay.
that's right, my friend. That's right.
Okay.
So
Any
let me
other
check the chat.
Nothing
I don't
there.
see any more questions here.
Yep. Feel free to reach out to me if anybody can think of a question afterwards, or go through Gustavo or Gonzalo. Either one's okay with me. I think my email address is on the front, so
Thank you so much. Very kind of you.